Welcome to the Bayonet's Countdown to November, a series of interviews with the candidates in the November 4th election. I'm Marty Madden. With me for this segment is Paul Harrison. He's an independent seeking an at-large seat on the board of Calvert County Commissioners. Paul, welcome to our
Thank you, Marty.
broadcast.
Thank you very much.
We're happy to have you here today.
Thank you.
Now tell us why you've chosen to run for county commissioner.
Well, I have a personal zoning case that I made the best of a bad situation. And what it told me was that the county doesn't really understand its role because it worked vigorously to suppress a tiny home business. And I didn't think that was appropriate. They ended up violating 9 state and federal laws. So as I paid close attention to how the county operated, I saw that they did quite a few things that were not smart business. The county is a municipal corporation. It's a business with guns, essentially, is what it is. So I would like the county to operate in a fair, honest, and lawful way. They didn't in my case, but that's done. And I would like to for other people, for other families, for other people who are starting a business or want to do something in their property or whatever it happens to be. I want to fight for their rights. I want to fight for them.
Okay. Well, the job of the county commissioner is to be the voice of the people.
It is. It is. So the county charge of the commissioners under Article 66B is the health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. So I think that is a proper charge for the commissioners, but they don't seem to be following that role. They seem in one article I saw that they wrote in a letter to the editor, I think it was the Calvert Recorder, they wrote that their goal was to ensure corporate viability of Dominion. I didn't think that was appropriate. So
Okay.
Okay.
We will talk about
Okay.
Dominion
sure.
and other. What do you believe are going to be the big issues for the next board to address in the next 4 years?
Well, I think there's 2 things. I think the next board is going to have to deal with the decisions of this board regarding Dominion. So the Dominion project is slated to end in 2017-ish, and I think that this board will have to deal with the issues that arise out of that construction and out of that project. The current commissioners, when they exempted Dominion from any local zoning review, they did not consider that. Essentially what they did was they abdicated their responsibility, so they allowed the project to go forward without any consideration of the local citizens. They agreed to allow a power plant. So there's going to be a 140 megawatt power plant on that site. So whereas the site doesn't make any noise now, it's going to make a lot of noise, about 60 decibels at 1,000 feet. So that's going to be an issue for the county commissioners to deal with.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, to play devil's advocate,
Okay.
They did have a public hearing on the.
Well,
zoning.
they had a public hearing to talk about the exemption of Dominion. And I don't know how many people showed up at that hearing. You know, they put a little blurb in the back of the paper and they announce it, and then they make that change to the zoning ordinance. That change was determined illegal by the circuit court. So you can't just exempt one business. You have to exempt a class of business or other things. And because we only have one liquid natural gas plant, that essentially became an exemption of one business. So
Okay.
I think instead, because this was such an exceptional project with such impact, they certainly could have had this be a special exception use. And in that case, the county commissioners would have sent a letter to each of the adjacent property owners. There are 364 houses adjacent to that plant. They would have sent a letter and given each of those people an opportunity, or each of those owners an opportunity, to weigh in on the project, this new use. It is a new use. The current, the way that the plan is structured was a passive construct, and now they're going to be an active construct, because they're going to take that gas and they're going to manipulate it and ship it off, as opposed to just receiving it and putting it into pipelines. Yeah.
So they circumvented the public input process.
Well, yeah, and so they had the public meeting just on the exemption. They didn't have any public hearings like the Board of Appeals hearing with those owners. In my case, my wife and I had to go through a Board of Appeals hearing because the county didn't honor our property rights to begin with, and they changed the law out from under us while our application, our permit, and our appeal was in process, and then they forced us to go to special exception. So they invited every person on our street to come and testify on whether or not this use would be impactful. They certainly could have done the same thing with Dominion. My wife has a chair in the basement that's not very impactful to the neighbors except for the car or two that are there every hour. 140 megawatt power plant and a liquefaction facility and 1,500 workers and all those other things are very impactful. I don't know why they wouldn't have considered that to be a special exception. Yeah.
Well, this kind of dovetails into what I have to ask next.
Okay.
Do you believe there is true transparency in county government? And if not, what would you do to fix that situation?
The transparency, that's a tough one. There was no transparency in my case. Okay, I don't have dealings with the county government every day, but in my particular case, there were 7 lies told to us during the course of our permit. There were 9 violations of law. So that doesn't seem to be very transparent to me. And then as I've broached this issue with current candidates, current incumbent candidates, they've told me the same line from the county bureaucrats. You know, it was my issue. Well, my issue is I had the property right already. I have a right of way to get from my house to the public road. The county shouldn't have come in and reconditioned. It's illegal in Maryland. It's been illegal in Maryland since 1948. So there's not really a lot of transparency in my case, but I can't speak for every single issue that comes up in Calvert County. But I've heard, and this is anecdote, but I've heard that the county is not terribly transparent. They're transparent on things they want you to see. The Tuesday hearing is broadcast on Channel 6. Anybody can see it. Mm-hmm. The budget process meetings were held in I think on the public access channel. So that is those things are very transparent. But there's decisions that are made upstream before they get to that point. That's not what's transparent. I think that was Jerry Clark that chastised the League of Women Voters. I was at the League of Women Voters event. And he chastised the public and the League of Women Voters for not having grand attendance at their event. And I think it's because people are disenfranchised from this government. They don't feel that their participation matters. And I think that all people matter. And I think when people take time out of their day and out of their schedule to come to those hearings, the least those commissioners could do is pay attention to those people. I mean, there are some very, very astute people in this county, in Calvert County. They're highly educated. They may have jobs in the federal bureaucracy or whatever, but they understand some of the issues that they speak about, and that could add some plurality into these decisions. Whereas now there seems to be a great amount of hubris in the commissioners, where they say, oh well, you know, don't bother yourself, peasants will take care of this. That's not good government. These are elected representatives. These are not people that are, you know, to in some benevolent way tell us, you know, what we should tolerate. So yeah, it's pretty funny.
Well, there's another government, and if you feel that Maryland jurisdictions are being handed too many unfunded mandates from the state, then what, in your opinion, does Calvert County need to do to assert its autonomy?
Well, you know, a political subdivision of, so when the state does something wrong, it's like the county is a wholly owned subsidiary of the state. Mm-hmm. So there's not much you can do. I mean, I guess you could be passive aggressive. You could refuse to honor, you know, what they tell you to do. But ultimately, the state has the economic leverage on the county. So if we don't abide by the instructions provided to us by the state, they could withhold funding for education. They could withhold funding for roads. They have other levers that they can make sure that we abide by their instructions or their decrees. I think that we need to work closer with our state delegates to make sure that our Calvert voice is heard in the State House. You know, it very much is the same way with federal mandates. There are federal mandates, and sometimes that money doesn't come with those mandates. Common Core is a prime example. That came from the Department of Education, came right through the state, and came right to the county. And if we want the 40% or so of the education budget to be covered from the state, then we will abide by Common Core standards, whether it's in our local interest or not.
Now, you said from the outset, what happened to you
Right.
in the zoning cases was the impetus for running for county commissioner.
It is.
How are you telling the citizens that you're not just an angry person running for county commissioner?
Well, the great thing about our case is that the public exposure and the education that I really received from being in that situation has, I think, been a very positive thing for me. I did not go to school specifically to learn local zoning ordinances. I went to graduate school to get my master's in business administration and a concentration in finance. So I understand finance, I understand how to finance things, I understand mergers and acquisitions, I understand when it's the right idea to you know, mine ore out of a mine. But I did, in my MBA, I did not study local zoning ordinances. So this I took as an academic exercise.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that was disconcerting though was that they would tell me that these are the rules, and I abided by those rules, and then they told me a few months later, oh no, those weren't the rules, these are the rules. Okay, well I just did what you wanted to here, now you're saying that these are the rules. I'm very law abiding, I'm very rule abiding, but the rules kept changing. And that, I think, is where that transparency is a problem back to county government. So, as far as my wife's business is concerned, my wife has more people getting their hair done than she can handle. I mean, the people that are now galvanized with us is in the hundreds. So this was not a bad situation. It worked out perfectly fine. But what concerns me is that not everyone will look at things with that positive attitude. Mm-hmm. They will try to start a business. This county will say no, maybe illegally, and then those folks will not have the willpower or the wherewithal or the resources to then push back. You know, that the county just defaults to no, and unless you fight for your rights, you don't have any. So that's I want to be up there every Tuesday fighting for people's rights, because a lot of folks don't have time or money or energy to fight for their own rights. They're going to work every day. They're doing their thing. They're trying to survive. They don't have time to be at the courthouse on Tuesdays at 10 o'clock to be there to testify and you know, to save their rights on their behalf. I want to be there fighting for them every day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Paul Harrison is an independent candidate running for Calvert County Commissioner. Thank you for being on this segment of Countdown to November.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
I'm Marty Matt.